Happy New Year to all our amazing listeners. As we step into a brand new chapter, may this year be filled with stories of triumph, love, and hope. Let's embark on this journey together, weaving tales that inspire and uplift. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I was sitting in my office late Friday night reviewing several candidates who had heard there was a job opening in our office. I worked as a regional manager for a chemical company that supplied chemicals for weed control, fertilizer, and water retention in the soil. Our livelihood depended on the farmers who grew or fed us what we ate. Because of our commitment to sustainability, we were the first company whose products were recognized as 100% environmentally friendly. The husbands of two of my office staff were promoted, resulting in their resignations. Both were moving within the next 3 months. We needed to find their replacements as soon as possible. Our sales department covered 8 states located in the heart of flyover country. Sales growth this year had exceeded expectations. Kathy, my executive assistant, looked into my office and said, "Ed, all 8 people have confirmed their interview times for Monday. I'm off, so good night." Every Thursday, I traveled to one of the states in my region for a half-day sales meeting on Friday before heading home. As a result, Thursday evening turned into an evening where my wife would go out with the girls. Over the years, it has become worth the considerable expense of paying for a babysitter. My weekly visits provided our sales reps with the personal contact they needed to help them with their performance and performance issues. This paid big dividends over the years. I never lost a single person in 8 years, and that was considered an accomplishment for the company. I just got back today and had time to check on a few cases before heading home. The company has been trying to get me to give up this part of my job for several years now, but I found that time alone gives me a chance to think things through in my own way. With a know-it-all wife and 3 kids, the quiet time spent driving was invaluable. It also saved our branch from having to hire a sales manager. I had experienced working in a budget-cutting environment, and I wanted to keep it that way. Our children are in junior and senior high school, and the oldest girl, my pride and joy, is graduating in the fall and attending Southeast Missouri State University. My employer has awarded her a full scholarship. My youngest daughter had just turned 16 and was busy studying for her GED. My wife of 20 years, Grace, was working as an executive assistant district attorney and had held that position the year before our youngest daughter was born. He had just been offered a new position as a lawyer in the federal government, and he accepted. The Fed seemed to like his uncompromising hardball approach. He'd be a fool to turn it down since it was double the money. He was supposed to start work in 4 months. I could never understand him. He was about the same age as me, but he never married. I didn't know for sure, but contrary to rumors, I didn't think he was gay. Every second weekend of the month for the past 15 years, my 3 children have been taken away by my parents so that my wife and I could have some time to ourselves. When they started doing this, my wife and I found ourselves at a crossroads in our marriage. My parents felt that we needed some time to ourselves without the kids. I have to admit it was the greatest gift they could have given us because it gave my wife and I time to find ourselves again. If they hadn't done that, we would have been another example of divorce. They had about 3 months before it was supposed to be over, as Amy, my oldest daughter, was going to work in our senator's office in Washington, D.C. for the summer before starting her undergraduate degree in political science. Some time ago, my father, with my permission, bought each of our 3 children a kit from Ancestry.com and jokingly submitted them for testing. According to their instructions, we knew there would only be a match if any of their relatives had submitted their DNA to the same program. My kids talked to me about it, and I gave my approval, saying that we all have distant relatives that we don't remember or know about. Perhaps this would open up a new adventure for us. Amy offered to surprise their mother until we got the results. We knew it could take up to 5 or 6 months to get an answer. This weekend, we traveled to Nashville to visit the Grand Ole Opry and were returning home on Sunday. My wife was the one who planned this special trip as a way to create another memory in our life's journey. I met my wife Grace in my final year of university at a soccer match. No, I wasn't one of the players on the field. I was one of those no-name grunts selling overpriced food to the spectators in the stands. She was one of the youngest daughters of the medical coach, so she always got free tickets. She had an argument with her beau over some stupidity that one of them took the wrong way. The jostling alternated with the pushing. I found myself in the center of things. She pushed him and stepped aside. He saw her movement and hit me with all his weight from the back. I fell and rolled down the concrete stairs, and the tray of food rolled with me. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital with my head bandaged. According to the doctor, I had 25 stitches because of my spit-up forehead. Grace must have felt guilty because she came every day to make sure I was okay. She met my whole family before I started seeing daylight again. They told me later that I was in a coma for almost a week because of internal injuries. When the fog around my vision began to clear, I saw an unknown goddess standing in front of me. At first I thought I had arrived at the pearly gates, and she was my angel guide. Then my friend appeared beside her, clear as light. Esmeralda was not impressed with the vision standing beside her. I closed my eyes and drifted into sleep, praying that Esmeralda wouldn't be there when I woke up and that it would all be a dream. When I woke up, the dream was still around, but Esmeralda wasn't. Esmeralda decided she had to find a new sweetheart to mess around with her. God favored my prayer. Grace stood next to me, never asking me anything while I was slowly getting my life together. I never asked her, but eventually we started dating. One thing led to another. When we graduated, I went into sales and she found her first job as a management assistant. At one of the family reunions, her younger cousin asked why she was still single, and she said because Ed hadn't proposed to me. 3 months later, I stood at the altar and watched the goddess walk toward me. 5 feet 8 inches tall, with long blonde hair, deep bluish, almost black eyes, and a figure that made men drool. Grace and I married. By the 5th year, we had both reached the point where we were ready to break up. To this day, I couldn't understand why or how we were separated. For all I knew, she didn't understand either. We had just stopped at Lambert's on the way home. To me, this restaurant lived off its reputation. What they liked most was throwing huge buns across the room into the air to be caught by customers, because all the other food was outdated, overcooked crap. We stopped at this tourist trap because it reminded my wife of her mother's home cooking. Need I say more? For some reason, my wife reached over and turned off our sound system. When she did that, it meant she wanted to discuss something serious. I reached into my jacket pocket and turned on the recorder. It was a trick I used to maintain confidentiality when I thought I might need to confirm what I'd said later. Ed, my wife Grace asked, "Have you ever thought about having an affair?" My first thought was what brought this on. My second was, why is she asking this? Does she have a child? Or does she know someone who does? Why does she think it's important enough to talk about it right now? I had to clear my mind of the questions before I could speak. Grace, let's be honest, I said. Everyone's been thinking about the affair. The better question is whether I've ever acted on it, and the answer is no. Why not? Asked Grace. Because I said my vows when we got married, I said. They meant something to me, and they still do. As society's attitudes have changed, Grace says, marriage vows no longer have the value they used to. I think you should forget about them and seriously consider finding a mistress with whom you would be compatible. If you're worried about your own guilt, consider that I personally allow you to have such a woman with my unconditional blessing. Having such a woman can help you to appreciate our relationship even more, as well as give you a deeper understanding of what we are. In this way, you will be free to receive the full value and enjoyment of the relationship when you find the right woman you want to have a relationship with, without the burden of guilt. I had a problem with her new point of view because it implied that using other people for her own pleasure and gain was acceptable to her. That was not the case for me. It was a side of her personality that I had never seen before. It made me change my perspective considerably. Answer me this question, my beloved wife, I said. Why is my open affair with your approval so important to you? Have I done something so disgusting to you that you want to find an excuse to destroy our marriage? After 5 minutes of silence, I turned the sound system back on. The lack of response spoke volumes. Grace always had an answer for everything. Now she was silent. I asked myself why. I now believe that my loving wife had a definite reason why she wanted me to have an affair. But why? Regardless of the reason, I now firmly believe that something was seriously wrong in our lives. I knew I had to find out exactly what it was. I had been driving for about an hour. We were about 40 miles from home when I saw my wife turn the sound off again. I reached for my jacket and turned on the recorder. I'm sorry, Ed, Grace said. I guess I've been reading too many Harlequin romance stories. Those ideas must have come from somewhere out of left field. With those words, she turned our sound system back on, figuring that would be the end of it. The problem was that our 3 kids and I knew she hated those books because they were her mother's favorite books. All her life she had called them trailer trash, and she was beyond that. Every time her mother handed her the last of her books, Grace would bring them home and throw them in the trash. After driving the last 40 miles, I realized that the one thing I didn't know much about was her Thursday nights with the girls. We didn't consider it something important or serious enough to worry about. On those rare occasions when I was home, she willingly changed her schedule to be home and with me. Until today, I had no reason to doubt those nights because I trusted her completely. The problem I had to face was that the conversation I just had gave me reason to question what those Thursday night bachelorette parties were all about. Was she going out with girls to bars and having questionable relationships like one-night stands? When I got home, I realized I had to find out what was going on during her bachelorette party. We pulled into our driveway as our kids did with my parents. When we got inside, I treated both of my parents to a rye and Coke. They told me about what they and the kids had done over the weekend. For my parents, the time spent with their grandchildren was invaluable. According to them, it was the grandchildren who helped them to stay young and modern. Each activity was organized with them in mind, so my parents were exposed to things they had never done before. They were there for about an hour, after which they headed home. I walked them both to the car. Ed, Dad asked quietly, "When would be the best time for us to stop by your office tomorrow for a private conversation?" "I have interviews all day," I said. "Let's say about 3 hours. Whatever the problem is, I'm here for you." "The problem isn't with Mom and me," Dad said in a whisper. "It concerns your wife and her youngest daughter." "I'd better not say anything more since your wife is watching us." "Okay, Dad, I can do it. I'll stop by your place after work and we can fix it in half an hour," I said loud enough for Grace to hear it through the window. After watching them drive away, I went inside and got my car keys. Then I took my toolbox and threw it in the trunk. "Hi, honey," I said. "I need to stop by my dad's tomorrow and make something for him after work, so I might be a few minutes late." "I heard you from the window," Grace said. "Don't worry, we can eat a little later." My dad showed up on time with my mom. They were escorted into my office. We sat down at the desk and waited for one of the staff to bring us coffee. As soon as the coffee was served, Kathy closed my office door, getting ready to leave. "Ed," my father said, "I'm really sorry about my stupid prank of sending our grandchildren's DNA. They found a DNA match for April. She has a paternal grandmother who is looking for her son and his descendants." With those words, he pulled out a form from Ancestry.com. It contained the woman's name and phone number. I was devastated. My father, just by looking at me, realized how much the news had hit me. "Dad, I don't think they made a mistake. So let's see what we can all figure out," I said. Using the office phone, I dialed the number and turned on the recording function and speaker. I wanted to make sure I had a permanent record of the conversation. The phone rang twice before it was answered. "My name is Edward Paul Adams, and I'm looking for Mrs. Beatrice Smith from a DNA match found thanks to Ancestry.com, I said. "This story isn't over yet. The twists and turns are just beginning. Stay tuned for part 2 where the real aftermath unfolds. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss it."